Welcome to the Power Lunch. I'm Rhett Power, your host. We do this program weekly, every day, pretty much, Monday through Friday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time on LinkedIn's new platform, LinkedIn Live. The point of the show is to talk to today's thought leaders, best-selling authors, CEOs, people who are doing amazing work in the world that we can all learn from. Now, the fun part about the show is that these people really can help us be better at what we do. So these are really great conversations. You can also, it's interactive. That's another fun part of the show. And it's only interactive if you ask your questions. You can only learn if you ask your questions. And so please do. Please, you can interact on LinkedIn. You can interact on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all those platforms, whichever one suits you, because we're live on all of those platforms right now. Now, if you like the program, give it a like or share so that your network can benefit from these conversations as well. Don't be stingy. It's Thanksgiving, share the wealth. Now, I've got Nick McHenry today. He's CEO and co-founder of Employi, and which is a really interesting platform. We're going to talk about that company, why he started it, the problems that they wanted to solve when they started it. He's actually going through a big pivot in this company, and so I want to talk about that as well, because that's a conversation that we don't often have about why you pivot and why you take your company in a new direction. But we're going to talk about first. We're going to talk about personal branding for employment and what that means and why you need to do it and how that landscape has really changed today. So, Nick, welcome to the program.
Hi, Rhett. Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, man. It's a fun. I think it's going to be a fun conversation and a helpful conversation. So, why did you start Employi? And what problems were you really going after and starting to try to solve?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when we set out to build Employi, it was really to solve our own problem with our own job search. I in my 20s, I had a lot of different jobs, like many new people, millennials have. They're kind of jumping 1 or 2 years, and I was always trying to find opportunity, and sometimes in different industries or different jobs. And it was just seemingly so difficult if I didn't go about it in a certain way. And over time, I got better and better at it. And what I'm referencing there is, if you've applied to a job or you've been actively searching for a new job in the last 10 years, and you've had to apply through a traditional job board, I think unanimously the response is no response. Like, it's an impossible feat. It's like you'll apply to hundreds and hundreds of jobs on job boards and you will get nothing. You'll just get no progress. You'll get maybe one interview per 100 applications. It's just not an efficient cycle. So there's this disconnect between I'm a talented person, I have something to bring to the company, and somehow I just cannot get a leg in. So we started to look at that problem as like, what's causing this? What can we do to better facilitate this process? And as we dug in, it comes down to a lot of technology, honestly, is that as technology has advanced in recruiting, it's actually created a farther disconnect between job seekers and the employers that are trying to find these job seekers. We do have a surplus of jobs right now because applicant tracking systems have gotten so advanced, AI built into it, resume parsing, resume searching, stuff like that. You really are you almost at a disadvantage when you hit apply, because unless you have the perfect things, perfect wording on your resume, perfect all this stuff, you're just not going to get through. So that applies to almost everybody who didn't go to the perfect school, have the perfect experience, et cetera, but they might be the best candidate for the job. So we set out to look at that problem and how can we better, bridge that disconnect between job seekers and employers.
What's creating it? I mean, I know it's technology. What does that mean, though? I mean, one of these big job boards, it seems to me that, and I'm probably guilty of it as an employer, posting jobs out there because you think you have to, right? Or you have to, right? You have to put it out.
Yeah.
It's a way to sort of put you know who you want, right? Or you have some ideas that might be maybe who you want to hire,
right?
But you put it out there anyway.
Yep. So because the job boards, I'm going to discount real small companies here, because real small companies is a little bit different process. But like the next size up, mid-size to big companies, which is usually our job seekers are looking for those kind of companies. They almost always go through an applicant tracking system. So you go to the job boards and you'll post on Indeed, LinkedIn, Monster. You'll post everywhere. Sometimes through their applicant tracking system, they can just post at once to everywhere. They're all get filed into one system, and then that system, either in the applicant tracking system itself or through a third-party, add-on, will basically, it will pre-weed out people so that if 1,000 people apply to a job at X company, that recruiter might only see 50 of those people, and 950 will just never be seen. They'll get put to the bottom of the pile before anybody sees the resume whatsoever. So you're getting pre-filtered out based on what the algorithms are telling the employer is the right fit. And employers are acknowledging that that's not exactly the right best process, but there's inundated. Sometimes they'll have 20 positions open for one recruiter. There's no way for them to go any other way about it. So it's just a tricky problem for them to solve as well.
I know what you mean though, because I play around with stuff on LinkedIn, and I'll look at the jobs portal thing that that's that system, and it'll say you have 7 of the qualifications for that job, right? And the things that are missing are like Word and Excel, like the all stuff, and it's all stuff like I'm excellent at Excel spreadsheets and Word, but it's excluded me from getting a credit for that because maybe somewhere on my resume I did not, and I know I didn't put that that I can use those programs, right? Yeah,
absolutely. And I think another thing that's missing in this, algorithmic approach is that our target market has been and has continued to be, the earlier stage career professionals, primarily students and people in their 20s. So for that demographic, a lot of these jobs are very soft skill heavy. Like even if it's an analytical job, the employer is looking for a lot of those soft skills, and that's completely left off of this portion of the algorithm. So there's this disconnect there too. Another kind of macro trend I want to touch upon is that the amount of applications that employers are receiving is actually increasing for most employers because of this trend it's been proven that job seekers want to do less work to apply to the job. So if you can shorten the application process as short as possible, that's why you see one-click apply on LinkedIn and Indeed. You can just go to the jobs and apply, because the employers want more applications. But in doing that, they get a lot more people that are not the right fit. So they have to plug in these algorithms to somehow filter through the noise.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. But it is really a new age in terms of being able to that one-click apply, right?
Right.
And that's the key to, I guess, having a good profile, sort of doing that initial setup of all that on those systems. Yeah.
Exactly.
What do people? Well, again, I'll ask you this: Do you think video? Let me jump back. Maybe that's a little ahead of myself. What can people do better? Because I know you worked a lot with people building more relationships with recruiters. Talk about that a little bit, because I think that's an interesting element of what you guys are
doing. Yeah, absolutely. So once we kind of dug into the problem, and we'll talk about video in a little bit because we were a very video heavy platform, and we started out as a video only platform actually. But when we looked at it, it's really quite simple, and that people can drastically increase their opportunity or potential for even that first conversation with a company by having relationships somewhere in the company, even if it's, someone in a different company that won't work with that company that can introduce them to someone at that company. The more relationships you can build with the companies you want to work for, genuine relationships, not please hire me relationships, genuine connections, just out of interest of what they're doing, is a gigantic benefit with improving your job search. If you basically, our thesis is that when you go to find that next job, you should know the first 10 people you're going to contact. And you should know that if you contact them, they'll at least pick up the phone and hop on a phone call with you or whatnot. So it's basically an activity that you need to do all the time. So really, you should be job seeking, even if you're not job seeking. You can call it networking, you can call it relationship building, whatever you want. If you want to be ready for that next step, you should always be building relationships with not just recruiters, but people in the departments that you want to work in. People that could be your potential future boss or could be any of these things. Really, and I'll touch upon this I think over and over again, we've taken a sales mindset to the job search. And in the sales mindset, you need to always be building relationships, always be building. I mean, in sales, you'll call it a prospect or whatnot. But it's the same thing with your job searches. Going to career fairs, talking to people on LinkedIn, scheduling information calls, just getting on their radar, even if you're not looking right now, or you might not be, graduating for another 2 years, or you might not want to leave your company for another year. Just starting to build that and take a longer approach to it.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think looking at the trends of, I don't know what it is nowadays, but it's what you stay in jobs 2 or 3 years, maybe.
Yep.
And so it really is a constant process. I mean, you really should be networking and building those relationships, because I think you're absolutely right that is really the key to, even with people who aren't looking, it's important.
Right.
I'm not looking right now, but we're always building, right? You never know what somebody's going to reach out and ask you,
Right.
for that next opportunity. And I think that's great. That's great advice. How do you build? So you talked about video. I mean, is the CV and the resume dead? Are we in an era where that's just really a useless piece of paper, and you have to do something else to stand out, something else to get the attention of that HR manager, or that first sort of cut of resumes?
So I think you keyed into a very important phrasing there, which is something else. So I absolutely do not think resumes are dead or CVs are dead. They are a necessary requirement to every job. I mean, you need to get to that point. Even if you go somewhere else first, they're always going to want to see your CV, because companies want to have something that they can show to their boss, or have something that basically is a representation of who you are. I do think that for the majority of people that are applying to jobs or looking for that next career move, you need to have that something else. You need to have that additional relationship, or some kind of personal brand, or something else to show them that's going to get them interested in you specifically. I mean, after a year of talking nonstop to recruiters, the amount of people who are taking that extra step is actually surprisingly low. Even the people that are sending handwritten letters after an interview I know it's like in traditional times, that was like a thing you did, right? You go to an interview, you send a handwritten note. It's like you're trained to do that. It's going down, and even just people reaching out interested in the company is not super prevalent. So doing that extra step will automatically set you in the higher percentile of people that get through that first conversation. The biggest challenge that we've seen is just getting the first conversation, like getting from I'm applying to this job to getting in touch with anybody, hearing even a no, and getting an answer is the biggest first leap applying to any company.
So what does that look like practically? So does it mean before you even apply? Because I think when you're networking, number one, you should be narrowing down what companies you want to target, right?
Right.
I think research here, understanding who you want to work for, where you want to work, what you want to do.
Absolutely.
Instead of sending out thousands of interviews or CV or resumes, how about spend that time researching and targeting your work and your focus, right? So how can you set like coffee? Would you, before you even apply to a job, would you try to get the hiring manager or somebody from that company that you want to have coffee with to learn more, sort of do internal brand building, I guess, or letting people know who you are?
Yes. My personal perspective is that's a better way of doing it, is first and foremost to have an exploratory conversation with a recruiter or with somebody that works at the company, just to learn what they do, learn what they're looking for, and if they have an open job, if they don't have an open job. And then step 2 would be to apply, because if you've made a good impression on that first conversation, you're then going to be pre-flagged when you apply. So they'll move you in their applicant tracking system to the being considered or interview sector, and you're going to be different than the rest of the applicants that just come through cold, let's say.
Right. So set that appointment up with anybody that you can talk to, so that you can put their name on your resume when you apply, so that it's that somebody in the company is recognized. That's good advice.
Yeah. And recruiters are a good place to start with, because there's a current talent shortage. There's a surplus of jobs and a talent shortage in the U.S. They want to hear from candidates. They're cold calling people, literally messaging people on LinkedIn to apply to their jobs.
So they're not getting a lot of people to call and say, "Hey, can I come talk to you?"
So depending on the company, it'll go up with the trendiness of the company, right? If you're Nike, you're getting probably a ton of cold outreach. But even Nike, we had one job seeker on our platform who sent one cold email to the recruiter, and they emailed back that day and had an interview set up for the next day, just by I want to learn more about the company. So I think a key thing about this outreach portion is to treat it, once again, like a good sales process. What I mean by that is treat it genuinely to add value to them and to not be two-faced in the sense of like, I'm just interested in you because I want to work for you. Like actually reach out to them to learn about what they're doing, to see if it'd be a good fit for you, to talk about what their initiatives are, stuff like that, and do your research beforehand so you can actually, intelligently speak to their needs specifically before you even get to the point of like, what jobs do you have open? Am I a good fit for that job?
Oh, okay. So how does that outreach look like? So let's say you send a recruiter an email.
Yep.
What's in that email?
So to me, what I recommend is doing I shouldn't say as much, but doing enough research before you send that email that you can reference either something that the company is working on that's relevant to what you're, trying to apply to, or even something that is better because everyone's building personal brand now on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever that individual is doing. So I would almost do both. Like, dear so-and-so, I noticed that your company is doing X, Y, Z. Here's why it's interesting to me. Here's what I'm looking to do in the future. And I also noticed that you had a pivotal role in that because you did just put on LinkedIn this PowerPoint presentation of whatnot. Super interesting. I especially like this point. Could we have a chat? I'd love to learn more about kind of what you guys are doing around this. And by keying into and showing that you put the research first and you're not just blasting people cold, which a lot of people do with an email template or whatnot, you're once again separating yourself from the crowd.
Yeah, I hate that when I get that outreach that for the stuff that I do and there's no research at all. You're asking me for a favor and you're not even acknowledging, hey, I love that article you wrote on this.
Yeah.
Shows that you at least looked up what I do and what I,
Exactly.
Just even a little bit goes a long way. Yeah.
But I think starting with that is super important. And, starting with I'm interested in what you do. And like I said, you did the research, about that person, and then getting to the rest of it afterwards is just hugely beneficial because it will catch their attention.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt. It does stick out. Those emails stick out from the, hey, can you help me do that? Like the one was copy and pasted to,
Yeah. And also, just besides that, we're seeing the comparable example in the world of sales today. We're a sales organization. I've spent my entire career in sales. I'm sure you get a lot of cold LinkedIn outreach as well. But there's so many reused moves that people are using on LinkedIn right now, such as like adding you, being like, I'd love to connect you with the network, in my network, and then immediately blasting you with an ask of like, buy my product or whatnot. So every time I get, even now with professional salespeople, I'll get 1 in 20 maybe that even know what we do and can actually reference what we do. And I'll always talk to those people who actually took the time to understand a need. And a lot of times they're right. Like, I have a hunch that you need this thing, like because I looked at X, Y, Z. Usually they're right.
Right. No, you can. Yeah, those I do appreciate. I might not use it, but I appreciate.
Sure, but at least it's the right tact. Like you're not upset by it, as opposed to like, hey, Rhett, like I'd love to talk to you about my product for your company or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I do appreciate that very much. So video, well, let's go into personal branding a little bit because I think that's a subject that I really, really love and am intrigued by. For me, it's been extremely beneficial. And I think it's relevant, for CEOs like yourself and others to really work on that personal brand.
Absolutely.
Because you never know what's next, and you never know, and it does give you an entry to have conversations that maybe you wouldn't have had before. And people look you up. The bottom line is people also look you up now. Right?
Absolutely.
It's the first thing people do. It's the first thing I do before I go to a meeting. I Google somebody.
Yeah.
At least I know something about them.
Yeah.
Right. And so how do you pull all that together? Right. What's your take on personal branding? How do you talk to your clients about it? What's the most people are starting from scratch, really. I even experienced CEOs that I work with in my coaching practice, barely any footprint.
Right.
Online.
Yep. So my recommendation is that every single person on earth should be building some sort of personal brand, whether they're looking for a job, they're the CEO of a company, they're starting a company. everybody should be building personal brand. And the first thing you got to do is start, because it's a long process. I think people look at it and they're just like, what? How am I going to do? Like, I don't want to build a social brand. Like, for this 1 year thing, it's like, no, it's like, I'm upset at myself that I went, 7 years before I even started building a personal brand. And if I had started 7 years ago, just even a little bit, doing a video a month or something like that, I would be, 500 videos deep now versus, 10 videos or whatnot. So it takes time. But at the end of the day, you have to look at, to me, I think it should be intentional. Like, I think you should kind of know what you're trying to build personal brand for, whether it's you want to be, co-founder of a company or start a company, or you want to excel at your finance career or whatever. You should be intentional about what you want to do, so you can structure your personal brand a little bit around that while still being authentic. But you need to also, I think you talked about video, understand where you can excel most and start with the lowest hanging fruit. We learned that with video, is that we originally thought everybody should be doing video, which I still think everybody should be doing video. But at the end of the day, it's tricky. Not every single person is super comfortable in video. I would say most people are not comfortable in video versus comfortable in video, on their own at least. Like in a conversational setting like you and I are doing, most people are pretty comfortable. But doing, self-recorded video is very uncomfortable for most people. But if you're a great writer, you should, focus there first and kind of build onto that. But everybody has a perspective. We're all having these conversations with our coworkers daily, doing these kind of things. So to not build that around and show the world some of the value you can provide is going to put you at a disadvantage in the coming years with your career or with anything, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that, like, when you talk about personal brand, I don't even, I think I would recommend that people just start by really creating a great LinkedIn profile. People look at your Facebook page and they look at Instagram and and to have all that there so that people can look at it and have it done really well.
Yeah.
And spend some time. I mean, at LinkedIn, I get almost entirely all of my coaching business off of LinkedIn now.
Right.
And it, so just building that profile, I think is a really good starting place, and getting help to do it if you have to.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we're in an age where getting help is so easy and so affordable that I definitely recommend taking advantage of that for sure. And I agree with you, setting that foundation, taking that first step to make sure you're represented everywhere. And one more thing I want to touch upon that I think you're really, really close is that personal brand is not just online. Your personal brand is everywhere. Your personal brand is when you go to work and how people perceive you. Your personal brand is how your boss perceives you, how your clients perceive you. Your personal brand is literally the epitome of who you are in the world. And that just happens to be expanding online now. So at the end of the day, you just need to look at, I think, what you're doing in real life. And I think so many people are just not making, to your point, that first step of like, okay, I already have this brand in real life, but I still don't have a LinkedIn profile.
I've had it for 20 years. And
yeah, that brand. Like, I haven't gone on LinkedIn in years. Exactly. It's like, but you're a business influencer that you have not actually done anything with. You just got to take that brand and put it on Facebook, put it on LinkedIn, put it on where the rest of the world is, as well as your existing contacts.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree with that. And what can people do? I want to touch on the video aspect of it a little bit more. Are recruiters looking at video? Are they looking at it? So when they go to your LinkedIn profile, they're going to click on, I guess they want to see who you are. Is that what that is?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's an interesting kind of transition for us. So we started the company under the thesis of, we can help job seekers take their resume and put it into video form, and that will separate you from the rest of the crowd. What we learned from that is that recruiters are interested in video, but it still hasn't actualized in the sense of like, okay, we want every candidate to have video. There's some big companies, like HireVue is a company that's the industry leader in pre-recorded video interview. A huge portion of the Fortune 500 1000 uses that. And what that is, though, it's very different than I'm making videos on my own time, showing who I want to be. That's basically just a representation of an interview in a pre-recorded form, as in, I put in 5 questions or 10 questions, my applicants go on, the question pops up, and then you state your answer and it records it and sends it to the recruiter. And even that has come under criticism in the last 6 months because people have been building AI around it, which has created privacy concerns and diversity concerns and all those things. So there's legality being put in place to that user now has to, in many states, buy into it. And you have to tell them how they're using your AI, what you're doing, and whatnot. But I think what really is happening is the recruiters aren't getting enough from the video for what they need because of the lack of conversational nature of it. In the sense of when we started to have our job seekers send videos to employers, occasionally it would get noticed, but it's really not until that next step where they're able to do the conversational nature with somebody of asking questions and how they respond in that nature where you get the big lead. But that being said, it's not going to hurt. Like you building video around your job search will absolutely not hurt your job search. It will only help.
So that's really what focusing on your expertise, right? Doing videos that show your expertise in a particular area.
Yeah.
How about for young people? College, university, high school, and I know I lecture my kids repeatedly on this. Just be cognizant of what you post.
Absolutely.
Because it can come back to haunt you.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think this idea of having professional social media and having personal social media is being grayer and grayer every day. You just have your brand online. Whether it's, it's like there is no like professional, personal. Like I have so many friends and colleagues and business partners I speak to that talk about, oh, I'm like this way on Instagram. There's this joke of like, I'm Instagram Saturday and Sunday and LinkedIn Monday through Friday or whatever. But at the end of the day, they're all connected, So the world is seeing, an employer is looking at your Instagram, they're looking at your Twitter, your LinkedIn, and they're seeing one you. They're not like subjugating this and being like, okay, cool. Like that's how they are with their friends. This is how they are on LinkedIn. That being said, you need to be wary of the platform and how it's perceived, let's say, to build your personal brand. But you're totally right. Everything is you. Everything will get seen. It's except for the one-on-one conversations of like, let's say the Snapchat one-to-one. That's more of like a text message kind of relationship where it is sort of private. That's kind of different. But anything you're putting out there public,
but not entirely, because you can snap and get a
good point.
Screenshot. So you still have to be careful.
You have to be careful with it, but it's not so much like I'm putting this public to the world. It's going to live on my Instagram profile or whatnot. The one thing I think that you're keying in on is I don't think people are thinking enough about it, in the sense of I don't think they're connecting the dots or thinking hard about how am I connecting my personal social media for my enjoyment or my friends or whatnot to the rest of everything I want to do with my life. And they're sort of just doing it because it's a part of the network or whatnot.
Yeah, I think I see it. I see the blending. You kind of see that, don't you, now?
Right.
I think that if you'd asked me 4 or 5 years ago, I said, "Oh no, LinkedIn's completed," but I don't know. I kind of think it's completely blended, and you don't see that separation. I don't know how you can separate it anymore. I mean,
no, if it's public to the world online, it's there. It's you. That's who it is.
That's what I find funny about people who complain about privacy on these platforms. It's like, right. If you post something, man, it's
public. It's there.
You're putting it out there. So, how you said you were telling me before we came on that you're making a huge pivot in the business. Let's talk about that a little bit. What prompted you sort of to change directions and refocus?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So it wasn't an easy decision by any means. I mean, we thought deeply on it and talked at depth of it. But really what caused the change is, I think we've talked for a while about it right now, is we were building technology to help facilitate networking, relationship building for job seekers. And it was improving, but we had a problem with the business model specifically in terms of the monetization element about how we could monetize, how long people were going to stay with us for the service. Because at the end of the day, we were basically trying to accelerate what you can already do. And we knew that in the sense that if you're going to do your job search in a great way, you can actually do it in an amazing way with LinkedIn, with Instagram, with reaching out to people, finding their emails and stuff like that. We were kind of just bringing it into one platform. But what it really came down to was growth potential and acceleration. Where can we make the biggest impact with our company? As an early stage tech startup, my perspective is your biggest responsibility to your employees, to your customers, to everybody is to not go away, is to be here in a year. Like if you can be here in a year and then be here the year after that and then continue to grow from there, you're succeeding as a startup. It's like this like cockroach mentality, right? If you can just continue to be here and not go away, that's your biggest responsibility as a CEO and a founder. So what I've also learned is that HR and recruiting is extremely, extremely complex. And if somebody had solved the problem we're going after with a silver bullet, they would be a multi-billion-dollar company. And at the end of the day, even LinkedIn, has its issues with recruiting and that nature of going back and forth. Yeah. So there's so many people tackling it. I think there's going to be many companies that solve it, not one company that solves it. And I don't feel that right now we are at a position to be the number one player in that space, mainly because it's increasingly complex and we don't have enough of the relationships pre-existing because neither myself or my co-founder came from HR or came from recruiting. And we've learned so much in a year and a half. But the industry that we're going into, which is the fashion and luxury goods retail industry, I spent 10 years in. And we already have these existing connections. So even since we started kind of took our existing technology and applied it to this market, we've seen a 10 or 20 time growth factor from revenue, from sales, from advisor relationships, from investors, from everything, just by applying it to a market we're, I'd say, experts in. So it's a combination of growth and also knowing where we stand and where we can make the biggest impact.
Okay, makes sense. What does that look like? How do you shift gears? How are you doing? How does that within your team and the dynamic and?
Yeah, so it's a great point. So let me talk about the technology part of things first. Yeah. In the sense of
that's important.
And I want to be super clear with, frankly, I think with any early stage startup, like the startup community is so hung up on this word pivot. And to people, it means many different things. And when it happens, it's like this big bomb. They're like, oh my God, they're pivoting. But at the end of the day, if you're if you're a tech startup and you're in year one or year two, you're always pivoting in a small way. You're always iterating. You're always trying to find the right fit. You're trying to find, where can we succeed? Where can we find growth? Where can we, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You're always pivoting or whatnot. So our company is the same company. The technology is exactly the same. Our perspective towards the job seeker market is going to be similar to where I think we're going to go in the future, in the sense of in B2B sales and in corporate America right now, everybody has tools to facilitate their business relationships from a CRM capacity, right, or from some sort of organizational component. But in the consumer market, that doesn't really exist unless you want to go sign up for Salesforce by yourself. So for job seekers, what we ended up building is basically an end-to-end CRM for your job search to manage your relationships and then facilitate outreach. And what my perspective on the CRM market is that it will continue to be subdivided and niched out for different use cases over time, because relationships are the most important thing that everyone knows that they have to have right now. And so people will need tools to manage those, but it will have to be industry specific and use case specific. So as we're doing it for job seekers, we're now just slightly transitioning it to this retail sales environment where we're helping retail sales associates in the luxury goods industry manage their core relationships and also build new relationships. So I think what's key in this pivot decision is if we were starting from zero, it would have been super, super difficult. But the technology is the hardest thing to iterate quickly because it takes time and money and developers and whatnot. So by taking the core 80% and then slightly shifting it and adding in what we need to add in for this use case has allowed us to accelerate much faster. And on the team side, I think I'm going to talk about my startup. I would say this probably applies to most startups. People that buy into startups will buy into your mission, and you need to make sure that that's consistent if you're changing your mission. Right. But you also, if you're a person that's joining an early stage startup, you're doing it for the growth, you're doing it for the potential to change the world, et cetera. So I think transparency and communication is the number one thing when you're doing such a large pivot with your team. In the sense of before we did this, we had hours and hours of team conversation of like, do we want to do this? Are we as passionate about this problem as this problem? Are we all on board? Where do we see ourselves in a year, et cetera, et cetera? So getting everyone's buy-in and really being a united front and like, we're doing this together, not because of one person's opinion, is at least what allowed us to do it successfully, I'd say.
All right. So Employi is now going to be what?
So Employi, we're rebranding the name. The name is very new. We're calling the new company Clientelier, which is a combination of, in the luxury goods industry, clienteling is the act of giving your customers such good service that you're basically anticipating their needs before they even know them themselves. And then the suffix IER, I-E-R, is like sommelier or hotelier or atelier. It's the French suffix, and the French is the king of the luxury goods industry for an expert in that thing. So sommelier is an expert in wines, and hotelier is an expert in the service of hotels. So we're blending in and we're allowing sales associates to really be an expert and master at bringing their customers the highest level of service through enhanced communication, really.
Okay, and being able to keep up with it, right? Just the system.
Being able to keep up with it. Exactly. So,
right.
So the number one thing that we found by going to this new market is that's exactly what you got it right in the head, in the sense of they can get on the first conversation, like, okay, if someone comes to my store and buys something from me, I can definitely email them and say thank you. But what happens after that? What's the second or third or fourth or fifth follow up? And what we're doing that I think is really interesting, and we're doing the same thing for job seekers, by the way, but we're sort of, obviously taking this for this use case, is we talked about already. There's so much public data out there on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on everything that people are putting out there. So we have data aggregators that allow our retail sales associates to know more about their customers from the public data that you're putting out there. If you release something saying, like Power Lunch Live got to 1 million, listeners or whatnot, then the sales associate can build that relationship with you by, writing a congrats to you or saying, like, that's amazing, like you're killing it or whatnot, and building a business and a non-business relationship to, grow your business, let's say.
That's great. That's amazing use of data, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think the world is going to continue to go that way, and that's if your job search, like I said before, like, doing that research before you reach out to somebody is absolutely essential, but it's difficult because you have to go and do it yourself. Sure. But because there's so much public data out there, you're going to need, companies like us to use that data and then bring it to the user in a very easy, palatable way.
Will it help you? Will it help them come up with packages and things that they can offer? Is that also the intent? So, is it going to collate enough data so that when I'm a hotel person, right? I have a luxury hotel, come up with a package of activities or things that person might want when they check in, or is that the sort of how?
Absolutely, 100%. In the sense of, because people are putting out so much public data right now that they, once again, especially as people continue to build personal brands, they want people to see these things. The hotel can use that data to their best ability, and because they're experts in this field, if they know more about the customer, inherently they can offer them better products.
That person likes chocolate, so you can have chocolate waiting for them when they do.
It's like if you go to let's use like HR, for example. I went to, in the last year, so many HR conferences. And people in HR go to conferences nonstop. If I'm a suit salesperson and I know that you're going to 30 conferences per year and you're wearing a suit to every single one of them because you posted on Instagram, I have a hunch that you have a pretty, dire need for suits in general. Right. And I'm able to then kind of like preempt your needs and sort of have a discussion with you and just be one step ahead of, I can't guess what you need, of course, but because I'm building a relationship with you, over time, it'll get better and better.
Sure. Yeah, fascinating. That sounds like an interesting change and an interesting new direction, and really just a narrowing down of your focus, really, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then focus is our mantra in our office, is like focus, focus, focus. We need to have focus. And we're trying to focus right now on the most niche we can possibly get and make a big impact quickly and hit critical mass in that niche and then expand from there.
Do you have any competition doing this?
So definitely is competition. I'm not going to say that there's not. It's definitely less than the HR technology industry, I would say. But there's for sure competition. But I see competition in our stage, an early stage startup, as a very healthy validation of the market. if you're going in with, I mean, we're a bootstrap company, so we don't have a lot of, funding to back it. And you're doing something that no one's ever heard of before, because we did do that for a period of time with Employi. It's a lot harder to get that early traction because you have to convince them on several things. You have to convince them that I'm the person to sell you this. I'm trustworthy enough that you should go with me. And then you have to convince them to somehow adopt the idea of what you're proposing. Like, I'm going to change the way you do things with this new idea. So I think step one, by being innovative, but not something they've never heard of, to start and get that early traction is super important. So we have like 5 or 6 competitors that are doing similar things, but I don't think as focused as we are to this specific subset of the industry, and then adding in some of the things that we're adding into the tool.
Okay. Well, good luck on that.
Thank you so much.
Sounds exciting, and wish you success there. It seems like you know where you want to go, and so that's a good thing. Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. The last question I ask everybody that I interview is, what's the best advice that you ever got, and who gave it to you?
Best advice I ever got. That is a great question. I'm going through all the advice I've gotten over my lifetime here. The best advice I've ever got is from my dad. I know I'm going to go to...
Hey, that's good.
But the best advice I've ever got is from my dad. And he has his own dance studio business, so that he has today. So he's been an entrepreneur his whole life. Is always make sure that you're giving your customers, your team, everyone around you more than you're receiving. And in the end, it will play out the way you want it to play out.
I like that. I think that's a good. Those are probably good words to live by as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Nick, thank you so much. Where can people find information on the new company? Is it
Yeah. So absolutely. So you can actually go to our Employi. It's just Employi with an I, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram. We're actually going to be, because we're the same company, because we're the same mission, we're going to be transforming a lot of that to our new company. So I'm going to be providing updates there in the next couple of weeks as we start to roll out this new company and start to make the transition.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, good luck again. And thank you for spending some time with us today on Power Lunch Live. We've got a great schedule coming up this week. It's just some phenomenal wellness experts. Actually, this is sort of wellness week on Power Lunch Live. Nick was the one exception to that. Yesterday, we had a great interview with I'm just blanking on her name. But anyway, we've had a couple of great interviews this week, and so we've got a couple more. Go to the website to look up the schedule, powerlunch.live, and you can find out who we have coming on the next couple of weeks, and give it a like or share if you like the program. But thank you so much, Nick, and you guys have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.